Hello, this is Orson Welles. I've come to call. Come to visit with you for a few minutes, and with your permission, every week at this time we'll have a little conversation about this and that, about people and the things they're doing all over the world. I'll try to have a story for each time, and I'm going to speak my mind about the news. You know, we don't have to agree on everything to be friends. This is a free country. That's how come I'm talking to you now, on this new program. I'm no more of an expert than you are. I haven't got a stable of spies working for me in Washington and Hollywood. But I've got a whole lot of interesting friends, and I meet a lot of people. These broadcasts are about those people and what I hear from them. Today's is about a new movie, about a bullfight, and about the trouble in Korea. But first, a few interesting words from our announcer.
You may never have heard of Lear radios. Well, the name Lear may be entirely new to you, but it isn't new to airplane pilots, far from it. To airmen, the name Lear and Lear radios mean a lot. For it was way back in 1930 that Lear began to build the especially trustworthy and precise radios that aircraft operation calls for. And for 15 years, Lear's reputation has grown in this exacting field. So to men whose lives and planes must rely on their radios, the name Lear is part of their language. Now, for the first time, you can have a home radio that carries the name Lear. It's a name destined to become as well known to the general public as it is today among airmen. Think of this when you see the Lear home radio. Since 1930, Lear has been the name men fly by. Now, here's Orson Welles.
I'm sure you've seen the pictures of the Japanese soldiers greeting our occupation forces with their backs turned. Seems it's a mark of high respect turning your back on somebody in Japan. Doesn't make much sense, but then a few things we're doing don't make much sense either. In the Far East, we're turning our back on something too. But more of this after a few less weighty matters. First, about mystery stories. Well, currently, the dullest mystery is the one about Hitler, and the best mystery is Uncle Harry. Uncle Harry isn't a relative of mine, it's a movie. Hitler, nowadays, is just a blown-up rumor in the papers. Another stale guess that Schicklgruber is still alive, as if anybody cared. But you will care about Uncle Harry while you're watching it in the picture house. One of the stars, Miss Geraldine Fitzgerald, makes you care. I'm very proud of her. We graduated from the same theater over in Dublin. And I knew she was a real actress, and I mean a real one, when I brought her over from Ireland to join the Mercury. She proved herself with us in New York, and then went on to Hollywood, where, up to Uncle Harry, she's been mostly wasted. Now, however, those in movie land who push the push buttons and push people around are sitting up and rubbing their sleepy eyes. Seems a great artist has been found, the kind who wins little gold statues at the end of the year. If you haven't scheduled anything for tonight, and if it's playing near you, see Uncle Harry. I think you'll agree. Well, right after this broadcast, Joe Cotton, his wife, and my wife are going to a bullfight. No, the sport hasn't been taken up in Hollywood, but with gas for sale again, Mexico's an easy 4 hours, even on pre-war tires. Joe and Lenore have never seen a bullfight, but Rita and I are fans. Aficionados, to be more technical. And if you've never seen a bullfight, please don't say we're bloodthirsty and cruel to dumb animals. We aren't, and neither are the thousands of good Spanish-speaking people who go on Sunday to the corrida instead of the races or to the ball game. Of course, a bullfight isn't a game. It isn't even a fight. If the chances were equal between the man and the beast, there wouldn't be any bullfighters. There wouldn't be any fighting bulls either. They'd all be murdered by wooden mallets instead of steel swords, and the strain would vanish. You know, a fighting bull is bred to be the most dangerous animal on earth. I can swear to that because I've faced my quota in Mexico and in Spain, too, pre-Franco, of course, and I'm just as scared of them as I am bad in my amateur way at fighting them, which, believe me, is plenty. A matador spent a couple of months in our house teaching Rita to work with the cape and the muleta recently, besides which there's a lot of bullfighter in her blood, so you can be sure that if the Cottons don't, our family will know positively wherefore we cheer and whistle this afternoon. A couple of weeks back, Luis Procuna fought in Tijuana. He's handsome with a white lock in his temple where a horn didn't miss him one afternoon. The ladies love him, and Mexicans will tell you he's the most popular and glamorous of the younger toreros. Well, the second bull the other Sunday was pretty good for Luis, so they gave him an ear, which means he had a hit on his hands, and we brought him up to Hollywood for a little party. Now, most matadors come from families that aren't very well-to-do, and Pracuna's no exception to the rule. He wanted to spend the night in the biggest hotel possible, so we took him downtown to the Biltmore. Alone, in a grand suite of rooms, Luis started looking for the shower, opened door after door in his quest for it. Finally, the door to the hall. It snapped behind him, and the great star of the bull ring found himself trapped in an excruciatingly public place with no word of English and no clothes except a bath towel. He was rescued eventually, but only after spending a terrified hour and a half cowering in a broom closet. He says he'll take the bull ring anytime. Oh, before I forget, please write me your suggestions and reactions to this program. As a matter of fact, I already got one letter. It was from a woman in Weehawken who read the announcement of this new series, and all she wants to know, for heaven's sake, is who do I think I am and where do I get off becoming a radio commentator? My time's running out, but I do want to answer that lady's letter. Dear Madam, there are no colleges for commentators. They just do it because they want to, and they go on doing it if the public doesn't stop them. Being an actor, which means pretending to be somebody else for your living, does not keep a body from thinking for himself, and that's what I'm going to do out loud if you and a few other people will permit. You know George Denny, the respected moderator on America's Town Meeting of the Year, used to be an actor. We have a couple of actors in Congress and a lot of stage-struck senators. I'm old enough to vote and I can read. Someday, that won't be enough to make a man an editorialist. But right now, it gets me in. Along with a lot of men you accept because you never heard of them doing anything else before. Most of these men will always be my betters. But a few are doing a lot of harm to the things I happen to believe in and love and want to serve. If you will stick with me for a few broadcasts, I'll try to let you know what those things are. I don't believe I speak for a minority opinion, so you and I probably agree about those things, or most things. We'll leave out the bullfights. I write a newspaper column you can read if you're curious. I'm one of the editors of a magazine called Free World. Among others, an American president and a British prime minister have been contributors, but don't think I'm going to campaign for anybody on this program. However, you may find me on an occasional soapbox, but be sure I'll be speaking then on behalf of those notions which were first drafted into our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. What's going on over in Korea, just for instance? Madam, I'd like a word about that. Japanese officials, the original aggressors, are being kept on in that unhappy little land to, quote, maintain order, unquote. It's a crazy extension of our discredited program in Italy, where the victors in an anti-fascist war did their darndest to keep fascists in power to maintain order among the anti-fascists. Didn't work out very well. The idea was to suppress communism by suppressing democracy. It encouraged communism. An unbroken line of disillusioned Italians day after day marches into the Communist Party because we seem to be afraid of our own political principles. Somebody should tell our military governors that we've been having quite some success with those principles at home for quite some time. Our top brass said of the Italians what Britain said of the Greeks. They aren't ready for freedom, which you may be sure is so much Simon pure baloney. The very first thing people who have been living under tyranny are ready for is freedom. The whole idea of liberation is liberty. We fought a war in the cause of the four freedoms, and now some of us seem to be sorry the victory was so complete. These are the same men who tried to tell us we could stay out of it, that Japan didn't mean us any harm, that we could do business with Hitler. These men were afraid of what we might win if we went to war. Their fears were justified. We won everything they didn't want. We are now committed to moral as well as economic leadership in a world struggling out of the Dark Ages. We will not abandon our responsibilities any more than our fighting men abandon their guns. But our administration in the lands we've set free is jerry-built. And all too many of our administrators are facing away, like the beaten Japs, from the outcome of our great conquest over fear and greed. The dazzling fact of this American peace calls for the same brave, big spirit which illuminated our part in the battle, the unbudgeted courage that bought the issue of that battle, the most terrible in all times. We are not little people. We are the bearers of man's brightest torch. The news from Asia is unworthy of us all. The Koreans have been assured that it is temporary, but the ugly truth is that we are using Japanese despots to protect Korea from the Koreans. It doesn't look well in the daily press, and our sons and daughters will find it unpleasant reading in their history books. With the same warped thinking, we encourage the rise of Nazism. Hitler, you remember, was to be a bulwark against Bolshevism. Now the leftward trend of Europe, a natural result of the war, alarms the same citizens who gave aid and comfort to the war makers. Their farthest horizon stands at the tip of their noses. They are even more stupid than they are wicked. Since the atom bomb, we can no longer permit them to organize mischief. If what we fear from the Koreans is a move toward Soviet Russia, we must not promote that move by representing ourselves, however temporarily, as the backers and guardians of any part of the criminal Japanese command. Our democracy is not so weak a thing that we dare not trust it to competition with other political ideas. I've said this before, and I will say it again. We cannot fight communism. We must compete with it. By suppression and retreat, we can only lose. As competitors in the high business of man's betterment, we will win. We will win that contest as we have always won. Madam, this is a great moment. The great moment in history. None of us, however humble, however inexperienced, can keep his silence if he can speak at all and live with himself. And I won't preach at you. I'm here to interest you in things that interest me, to start some arguments maybe, to stimulate some conversation. I'll try to keep you amused, madam, and I am very sincerely, and as ever, your obedient servant. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's almost time for me to leave you. If it's good enough, I'll tell you about the bullfight next week, but our main topic will be something else. A word about it in just a minute. First, our announcer has a few excellent thoughts for you.
For over 15 years, Lear has specialized on ultra-precision radios for airplanes. Now, Lear is producing home radios, and just as you would expect, these radios benefit from this tradition of fine craftsmanship and precise engineering. There are many styles and models of Lear home radios. Some have television. Some include high-fidelity static-free FM. There are handsome console models with record players and automatic record changers. And some will have Lear wire recording that you've been reading about. You'll find, too, that with all their fine background and precise construction, Lear radios compare very favorably in price with less distinguished radios. They range from the top of $500 all the way to a table model at $19.95. The only way to appreciate fully what Lear is contributing to home radio is to hear these new radios yourself. Soon you can go to your Lear dealer and have him play them for you. We're sure you'll agree that you'll get more radio value for every dollar you pay in the Lear radio. And now, back to Orson Welles.
Next week, we're going to talk about the greatest man in modern popular music. We'll have a word about Congress and the elections abroad, and it seems Hollywood is boiling with a fight about the USO entertainment overseas. Bob Hope is lined up on one side of the argument and Frankie Sinatra on the other. We'll look into the matter, and I'll also have something for you on the revised point systems for discharge. A couple of less hefty items go with us. There'll be a story you might like, maybe a little surprise you'll like a little more. And if you'll make this 15 minutes a weekly arrangement between us, I'll be very happy. Until next time, then, my sponsors, the makers of Lear Radio, and I remain, as always, obediently yours.
The opinions of Mr. Welles do not necessarily represent the views of Lear Incorporated. This is the American Broadcasting Company.